I have a special guest with me on today. Her name is Kimleah Sherman, and she's going to be talking about the amazing and the amazing and important piece that needs to be put in place when it comes to looking at your loved ones and preparing properly prior to them transitioning. The reason why I say it's amazing is because it's something that needs to be done. It's an awesome responsibility, which makes it amazing, and a lot of people shy away from it. And again, she's going to lift up why it's so important. Her name is Kimleah Reed Sherman. She's the owner of Reed Sherman Law Firm located in Charles County, Maryland. Her mission is to educate and empower the community with strategic solutions to protect their families, assets, and legacies. She's a family law and estate planning attorney licensed in Maryland and D.C. and accredited by the Department of Veteran Affairs. Her passion for estate planning is fueled by personally witnessing what happens when loved ones die without creating a plan, the loss of assets, but more important, the relationships that are destroyed. Kimleah, welcome to today's show.
Thank you for having me.
It's I'm so honored that you accepted the invitation to be on today's show, because again, considering the fact that Miss Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, passed away, and I read an article that indicated that, and I actually read it on your website, an article indicating that she didn't have a will or estate plan. Could you share some more about that?
Sure. Initially when I heard that she was terminally ill, as an estate planning attorney, my first instinct was, I sure hope that she has a comprehensive estate plan. And well, the reports have stated that she did not have a will. Mm-hmm. And when I heard that she didn't have a will, I was disappointed, but I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised because 60% of Americans and 70% of African Americans don't have a will. But the focus has been on the fact that she doesn't have a will. Yeah. I was concerned that she didn't have a comprehensive estate plan. Okay. But more important, I was concerned that she didn't have a trust. Because a will, oftentimes when we think of estate planning, we think solely of a will in the context of who's going to get our stuff when we die. Yeah. But a comprehensive estate plan entails more than just distributing your assets upon your death. So I'd like to think about an estate plan as crisis management or contingency planning in the event of a crisis. You talked earlier about a medical crisis where you may become paralyzed, and there may be a situation where you have a stroke, or a medical crisis where you're unable to take care of yourself and your minor children or your loved ones. So estate planning allows you not only to distribute your assets, but it also allows you to make provisions for who's going to take care of you, who's going to manage your finances, who's going to take care of your minor children or dependent adults in the event that you're unable to. But estate planning, the reason that I was concerned about her not having a trust, more specifically than a will, is that a trust will provide asset protection that a will not provide. Yeah. Even in the event that you're having a medical crisis or upon your death. A will is only the will becomes effective at your death. But if you don't make those provisions prior to experiencing a medical crisis, then there's a lot of processes, unnecessary stress that's being placed upon your family, because they're going to have to go to the court and have to get those things taken care of.
And I think that's a really important point to lift up. You said a lot of unnecessary stresses, and I know we have a caller. I'm going to get you in 1 second. But in reference to the unnecessary stress, like some people may even say, having this conversation about estate planning and wills, and it just seems so sterile. It seems so, why do I have to think about death prior to death? Why do I have to engage this? But like you said, it's going to cause undue stress if this stuff is not in place prior to your loved one transitioning. So you're going to deal with the stress either way. I believe we have a caller. Go ahead with your comment or question.
Hello?
Yes, caller, go ahead with your comment or question.
Oh, I got a comment when you said something about crying is a cleansing. That's very true. A good example is when Michael Jordan won the championship after his father died. He was on the floor crying, man, and you could see he was in pain, but it was mostly for his father. What about winning that championship? Yeah, I found that some of my real close friends, when they have crises in their life, I'll be on the phone crying. I'm considered one of the tough guys in my neighborhood growing up, man, and It just hurts me when other people that I love suffer, you know?
Yes, yes.
But I just wanted to say that because a lot of people can relate to Michael Jordan. They consider him one of the best that ever did it. But he was grown enough, and people of all races could appreciate that man crying like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, caller, thank you for that comment. I do remember that time period. And so, Kim Leah, you know, when we look at putting things in place like a trust, like a will, you referenced that it should be done prior to your loved one transitioning. Let me ask you this question. So if we're all aware that we want to make sure that our assets are appropriately distributed, what is the resistance? Why is it that people are running away from it? Why are we like, I don't want to deal with that?
I think there are several reasons why, and I think, and I had a conversation with someone earlier this week, last week, and what was said was that we feel like we're going to jinx us if we talk about death. Mm-hmm. But the reality is, and you spoke about this earlier, death is a certainty. Mm-hmm. Whether you speak about it, it's kind of like taxes. April 15th, no one wants to prepare for our taxes, but we begrudgingly do it. But the consequences of not preparing to pay your taxes are a lot less than the consequences of not preparing for your transition. Mm-hmm. But I think most importantly, because one of the things that I often hear when I'm talking to clients is that I don't have an estate, so I don't need an estate plan, or they associate estate planning with the wealthy. And as we know that the 60 and 70%, the celebrities are included in that. The people that have wealth, they're also not planning for their estate, for their transition or for the medical crises. Mm-hmm. And so if we can, I'd just like to deconstruct the I don't have an estate, so I don't need an estate plan, if we will. First, I'll start with the I don't have an estate. And I'll say that if you have a bank account, if you have life insurance, if you have a home, even if it has a mortgage on it, there may be equity. So you have an estate. If you have investments, if you have a car, if you have any personal assets, albeit something with monetary or sentimental value, those are things that are part of your estate. So I would argue that every American adult has an estate. And if you have an estate, you need a plan.
So repeat that one more time, because I think that that's important. You're saying every American adult has an estate.
Absolutely. With few exceptions, I would offer that every American adult has an estate. And particularly, and children are not property, so please don't call in, suggesting that I'm making this argument. If you have kids, you have an estate, and you have even more reason to have an estate plan.
Yeah, that was powerful right there. Every adult, and if you specifically have children, you have more of a reason to have an estate plan. Again, if you want to call in, please call in at 202-588-0893. Again, that's 202-588-0893. I'm here with Kim Leah Sherman of Sherman Reed Law Firm, and she's discussing appropriately and properly planning for the loss of a loved one. And so, Kim Leah, so when we look at the nearly 70% of African Americans that have no will or estate plan in place, what that does is not only affect our ability to transfer wealth to future generations, but also it makes it difficult too, maybe in some instances, to transfer value, to transfer our values of what we want our legacy to look like, what we want our future generations to look like, what we want future generations to engage in, and what we want their responsibilities to be. So it goes beyond just the financial component. We can also look at the transfer of values when you talk about an estate plan as well, right? Absolutely.
And in addition to that, without an estate plan, oftentimes relationships are destroyed. Families, and I'll use the example of having a medical crisis. Say a parent has a medical crisis and that you have two kids that are trying to make decisions, and although they have their parents' best interests at heart, they may have competing ideas about what is the best decision. And during that process, there's argument, there's conflict, and if there's no medical directive in place, what typically happens is they have to go to court and decide who's going to be the guardian and who's going to be the person that's going to make those decisions. But had they taken the time to execute a medical directive, everything that parent wants with regards to their medical care and under what circumstances would be laid out in there. And it would eliminate or at least minimize the likelihood of families arguing and, fighting over what's the best type of care for their loved ones.
Okay.
And that's just in the incident of a medical crisis. Yes. But, things get even uglier when loved ones transition.
Yeah, it's important, y'all. What I'm hearing Kim Leah say is that you got to handle your business. You got to make sure you handle your business, or I guess the probate attorneys will handle it for you. And so it's important that you handle your business and make sure certain things are put in place, like a will, like an estate plan, because you want to make sure that you're not only leaving a legacy for your family financially, but also through the values as well. You don't want your family breaking up, y'all. I believe we have a caller. Caller, go ahead with your comment or question.
Hi, yes. I just want to express my gratitude for all of you for bringing up this subject, and everything that I've heard so far has been extremely helpful. I lost my mother 8 months ago,
I'm sorry,
and then I lost my father a year and a half ago. So last year and the years leading up to have been very difficult, and just been excellent to hear everything, especially what was most recently said by the guest around family quarreling, and sometimes you just have to walk away because depending on the level of dysfunction in the family, it's better for one's own safety and just mental health to get out. Luckily, both my parents, may they rest in peace, did have a good portion of their papers put in order, and I was able to receive a humble amount of an inheritance, but the process itself is never a straight line. There's a lot of layers to it, and then within the middle of it all, I found what helped me out most was community, and a lot of my friends have stepped in and helped out, and even just being there, not really even having to say anything. But I just wanted to call and let you all know that I really, again, I appreciate and have a lot of gratitude for you all touching in onto the subject right now.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I'm sorry for your loss as well. So you had your parents had some things in order, and that's definitely a good thing right there. Having some things put in place. Again, thank you, caller, for that call and for that comment. When we look at estate planning, I do have a question, Kim Leah. Some people might say, I got the good government job and I got my life insurance. Is that not enough?
No, that's definitely not enough. And I hear that all the time. I have my beneficiaries listed on my life insurance policy. I have them listed on my accounts. But the challenge with that is that those are considered non-probate assets, and which means that they don't have to go through the probate process. But you also want to think about the challenges and the risk of listing your beneficiaries on your life insurance policy because it doesn't provide the credit protection or the liability protection that other tools may provide with regards to that. And I'll use the example of, let's say when you leave benefits to your beneficiary, you want that person to be able to have those benefits and be able to use those benefits for whatever purposes they choose or whatever purposes that you've designed. But let's say you left those benefits for that individual. It doesn't protect them in the event that individual were to go through a divorce or that individual has to go through litigation. The resources that you left for your beneficiary may be taken or exhausted by just the mere fact that you left them, and those are their assets at the time. So there are other tools that you can use, such as a trust. If you put you make the trust the beneficiary of those assets, but your loved one will still have access and use to those benefits, then it protects them from those types of liabilities.
Okay.
So those are just different tools that you might want to consider, and those are the reasons why I tell people it is essential that you talk to an estate planning attorney versus go out and download something off the internet, because it may not necessarily give you the protections that you think that you're going to have, and when you realize it's too late.
Okay, great. And that actually leads me to 2 additional questions, but I know we have another caller. Caller, go ahead with your comment or question.
Yes, hi. Can
Hello.
you hear me?
I sure can.
Hello? Yes. I had a question for myself, but then I know someone else going through this. So she told me that her mother left stuff for her and her children and her brother and his children, not to the spouse. So if the mother passed, she wants to know, and the will she written, does the spouse can still get stuff from her if they get a divorce, because they think about getting a divorce. And if it's in a trust, can the spouse still fight for some of the money, even though he's not in the will?
Okay, if I understand your question right, you say that there's a mother who is attempting to disinherit her spouse?
No, she's leaving her stuff to her children. She did a will for her because she just lost her father, her husband. So now it's just the mother. But the mother made a will so where her children and her grandkids is left with the money, not the spouse. She left the spouse out.
Okay, so my understanding is that the mother wants to make sure that her child's spouse doesn't get access to her assets.
Correct. It just goes to the children and the grandchildren and the children.
Okay, that's a great question. And that goes back to what I talked about earlier, being how a will may not protect you from those liabilities. If she puts the money in a trust, then depending on the type of trust that she creates and how it's structured, it will protect her daughter from losing those assets to a divorce.
Okay, thank you, Kim Leah, and thank you, caller, for that comment and question. Kim Leah, so I do have two questions. The first question is, how soon should you go through the process of creating a trust, creating a will?
You should start the process as soon as possible. As soon as you believe that as soon as you decide that you care about what happens if you become incapacitated, if you care about what happens to your money, if something happens and who's going to make financial transactions on your behalf, if you care about what happens to you and what type of medical care that you want or you don't want, if you have kids, you should do it as soon as you find out that you're going to have kids. If you decide if you don't want to burden your family with the stress of having to go through court, if you care about your relationships, your family, that's when you should get an estate plan. So I would say you should get one yesterday.
That's a great answer, and I'm glad you lifted up the kids, because I was just trying to find a line that I need to hit, or that people should hit before they go ahead and decide to create an estate plan. But when you say when you have children, because I think that we often think that we think that we're invincible in our 20s and maybe even early 30s. We're not necessarily having as many health challenges, and we think that we're invincible. But when you said that when you have children, you need to have an estate plan, then that right there concretized it for me and made me think like, okay, and hopefully other people are thinking as well, like, I need to get on the ball, I need to get things in place. I believe we have another caller. Caller, go ahead with your comment or question.
Yes, hi.
Hello.
This is me again. I had two questions. I was asking for my friend and myself.
Okay.
Now, I have one daughter, and I don't have that much money. I just have some stuff here and there, just a little bit. But she has 4 kids, and I keep telling her she needs to go ahead and write something and make sure they're all on the same page, like the lady was saying, when someone dies, a kid may not want this, the other kid. How can I convince her to do that? To go ahead and don't be scared to do it, even though she has a husband too. But I think my oldest grandson, I'm about to cry. I don't think he wants to do anything my daughter wants to donate her body like I am. But I think he doesn't want her to do that. He wants to have a funeral. The other kids are for it. And I'm scared it's going to be a very big argument over this, if God forbid, if she passed away. So she needs to put it in writing what she wants done, correct? No matter what. Can he fight against that if she wants her body donated? Can her son do that?
Okay, I want to address two things that you said. You said that you were asking the question for yourself and for your daughter. But one of the first things that you said is that I don't have much, but then you focused on your daughter getting an estate plan. Estate planning isn't solely about the amount of resources that you have. There are so many other aspects and so many other layers to estate planning. So I would caution you in thinking that because you don't have much, you don't need an estate plan. But with regards to your daughter, if she does have an estate plan and if she has things in writing, then there's less of a likelihood that her son won't honor those. But the important thing is having a conversation. Oftentimes we avoid the conversation, and I tell my clients that telling me what you want, establishing an estate plan, but not having a conversation with your family members. I think having that conversation is also an instrumental part of the estate planning process. So while her son has reservations about honoring her wishes, it's very important that she has a conversation with her son and explain to him, why it is that she wants her body to be donated to science.
I'm glad you lifted that up, because that actually leads me to another question for you, Kimlia. Can one spouse establish a trust, will, or estate if the other spouse isn't ready to plan?
Yes. However, there may be challenges in doing so, but you can still get it done.
Okay.
But again, ideally, you want both spouses to be on the same accord. And when you're doing the estate plans, that they don't have to be the same. Mm-hmm. Your estate plan may be different, or it may be similar to your spouse's estate plan.
Okay.
But there are certain things that you have to take into consideration, especially given if you have property and things like that. You have to take into consideration how those things are titled when you're deciding how you're going to distribute those things upon your death, because you may not have the legal authority to do so. Because what happens is the legal ownership will trump the terms of your estate plan.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. I believe we may have another caller. Caller, go ahead with your comment or question. Okay. I think the caller just hung up. Kimlia, so when it comes to this whole estate planning piece, you lifted up definitely when you have children. I guess another barrier that people may be encountering when it comes to estate planning is the complexity of it. Is it difficult to do an estate plan?
Well, it's difficult if you don't understand the elements of an estate plan. And part of my practice is, when I say I like to educate and empower, when my clients come in, we work as a team. They don't come in and tell me. If they come in and say, I want a will, what I normally do, the initial stage of my process of the estate planning is we do a 2-hour workshop where I explain all the elements of estate planning. And I also explain to them the risk of not having an estate plan. What happens if you don't have a power of attorney? What happens if you don't have a medical directive? This is what a will provides. This is what a trust provides. Because oftentimes people think that a will is an estate plan. A will is simply a component of an estate plan, but it also has its limitations. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so y'all hear Kimlia. She's dropping some jewels here. We got to get our business in order. Again, you can please feel free to call at 202-588-0893 if you have any comments or questions. Estate planning, again, it means that future generations don't have to start from scratch. If you put certain things in place prior to your transition, they can use the estate plan possibly to launch their business, finance their dreams, and lessen the burden that their children or your grandchildren may experience. And so estate planning is definitely a critical component when it comes to building wealth in this country, but also leaving a legacy. It's important when it comes to leaving a legacy.
And I'm glad you said that, because I want to touch on the transferring the wealth as well as the leaving the legacy. With regards to Aretha Franklin, we hear that she has an $80 million estate, and under Michigan law, her 4 sons will get equal shares of that estate. They're not going to get $20 million apiece, because a large portion of that is going to go into and it's going to go back to the government for inheritance taxes, which is unfortunate, because had she structured her estate properly, she may have avoided those inheritance taxes. So you're talking about maybe $32 million that's going back to the government.
Wow.
And that money could have been used to transfer generational wealth. But in addition to that, the Queen of Soul had a very illustrious career, and we will remember that, her Hall of Fame, her Grammy Awards, but her legacy will end with an asterisk. She didn't have an estate plan, and this is how much money she's going to lose. And in addition to that, there's likely to be a lot of litigation with people, and we call them creditors and predators, laying claim to her estate. And will exhaust a lot of her estate as well, because you're going to have to pay the attorneys that are representing the estate, and then it's going to increase the probate process. And those are additional fees as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that and breaking that thing down, Kimlia. I really appreciate you again joining me today for this topic, a difficult topic to discuss, but a necessary one because we all deal with it. We've come to the end of our time, and it does not have to end here, listeners. If you want more information from Kimlia, I'm going to have her share some information about how you can get in contact with her. If you can spell your name out, provide your website and also your phone number, I believe the callers and listeners would definitely appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. My name is Kimlia Reed Sherman. That's Kemlia, Reed, Reed, Sherman, Sherman. My website is reedshermanlaw.com, and my social media platforms are Reed Sherman Law. My phone number is 775-453-6542. I can also be contacted by email. My first name is Kemlia @reedshermanlaw. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, y'all, for tuning in to today's show on The Art of Overcoming. We hope that you tune in next week. Coming up next is Dr.